I've worked for several years since college as a waste management professional, or to put it another way, a garbage man. Either way, I'm not working now, because I would be a dead man if I tried. I've driven 2 states north from my apartment, and I'm not going to stop until I'm in Canada. I'm hoping beyond hope that I'll be safer there, even if I can't enter legally. I'm posting this at a public library, and even then, I'm lucky that I found one where I can boot into Linux from a USB thumb drive. If I had to use what's on the library computers, there's no way the people involved wouldn't track me down. Let's take this from the top. My name is Sam Pruitt, and I applied to work at Rosie Homes Waste Disposal. They offered a yearly salary that topped $50,000, with a $10,000 sign-up bonus. The very idea of a sign-up bonus is pretty much unheard of in a job market where you'll stay with one company for years, maybe even the same route. But I just happened to be unemployed, and they just happened to post one of their ads online. One phone interview later, I was scheduled for an in-person on Monday. The real interview was at a nice building on a side street facing one of the city's many well-manicured parks. It was fairly large, dwarfing the Japanese restaurant and the antique shop on either side of it, but just as well decorated, with a neon sign and an attractive coat of paint over its original concrete finish. The receptionist was as friendly as she was prompt, and I found myself sitting across from Theodore, one of the company's managers, in 5 minutes flat. "So, Sam, I think this interview is something of a formality," he started, a thin smile on his lips. "But let's talk anyway. What would you say is your greatest weakness?" Theodore already knew my experience, and we had a few good chuckles between ourselves about the stock questions that he asked. He was sharply dressed for someone in a garbage company, with a black 4-button suit and a bright blue dress shirt, but I figured that was just for the interview process. Not so. He wore a similar outfit every day after that I met him. Needless to say, I got the job. After that was the onboarding. I had enough experience that they knew I could load and unload trucks, keep to a schedule and a route, and be economical with my time. None of that was in question during the process. They just wanted to make sure that I knew the particulars of the job. All of Rosie Homes' clients are rich folk who've opted out of public waste disposal with the city. Tech CEOs and movie stars, bankers and wealthy heirs, to name a few. Apparently, they have that option, although it's obviously not something you would fill out on an online form for. Every house in a Rosie Homes route is served by Rosie Homes and nobody else. What made this special is that every customer had a specific pickup time, and I was to pick up each household's garbage no later than 1 minute after that time. No pressure, I thought to myself. It was a weird rule, but one that I could follow. Presumably, they just didn't want their trash visible near the front of their homes for long. It was a little vain, but I wasn't going to bat an eye at that. Rosie Homes also offers customers its own bags, thick white plastic with no transparency, and a single red line on one side. I was told that every one of their customers uses these bags. I was also told not to take any trash that wasn't in one of their bags. This, I assumed, was to avoid liability for anything that their household staff carelessly threw out. More so, they could use the public option for other waste from a different driveway. I understood all of that, and confirmed no less than 3 times that I did. The day after, it was time to start my new job. It's when I was making sure the clog grabber in my truck was working, and then I had brought the right cleaning products to treat a curbside spill, that Theodore approached me about the rule. "Alright, Sam," Theodore told me, hands on his hips and his upper lip stiffened. "You know how to do your job, you've been through the company procedure. But there's one thing that I need you to do. It's not in the books, but it's more important than anything there." I responded to him as I started assembling the gear that I would need in my favorite bag, not looking away from the task. "That's fine, tell me." "Don't look in the bags, not even accidentally." The work wasn't much harder than any of the other garbage collection work that I've done. There was plenty of breathing room in the schedules. Even if I drove slowly in high traffic, I would make it to each customer's house with a few minutes to spare in most cases. I got a few tips from my other coworkers. Be a minute early, but not much more than that. The customers don't like it when we linger, they told me. Rosie Homes has clients across the city that it operates in, and in several neighborhoods of adjacent cities. The thing is, they're very spread out. It could be 15 minutes or even a half an hour before I get from one customer to the next. Like I said, Rosie Homes offered an exclusive service to the rich, and while a few of them were bunched together, the company couldn't have had more than 40 clients in total. Some of them, mind you, were fabulously rich, and several of them had garbage collection from different homes they owned on different days of the week. Others ordered garbage collection from corporate campuses that they owned. I would have gotten a good look at the lifestyles of the rich and famous if Rosie Homes' motto wasn't, "Get in, freshen the air, get out." So that got me thinking one night, as you often do when you're stuck in traffic or repeating a monotonous, low-risk task. What were all these rules for? I didn't come up with a good answer until it was too late. Privacy has never been a huge concern when it comes to trash. I pondered as I got out of the truck and approached someone's massive garden of yarrow. Some cities and states have rules against trash picking. Others consider trash a public domain. The city that I lived in was the same, more or less, but a number of homeless people had been taken in for disorderly conduct anyways. Of course, I retorted internally, as I walked over to the large bin that sat tucked between a tree next to the driveway. Having special bags isn't going to stop the homeless from dumpster diving anyways. It's a weird shibboleth that designates Rosie's contracts, basically. So, what's the point of that? I considered that maybe Rosie Homes is working with the city, and the special bags are to mark the subjects of a pilot program or something. Or maybe each bag is some kind of barcode hidden inside the red strips. The Rosie Homes does special sorting that the city can't provide. Perhaps most unlikely though, it was my idea that it was just for style. I considered all of these possibilities, not watching what I was doing as I walked back to my truck. And then I dropped the bag. It hit the metal with a meaty thud, slid against the sharp points above the back tires and tore open, releasing a smell that, in my years of experience, I had never encountered before. I heaved, bending forward in an L shape and stumbling back. That gave me an even closer look into the dead eyes of a young blonde man. Lulled so that I saw in that moment was white ringed by pink. He had unwashed hair tarnished by dirt. He had been stripped of his clothing, and through the tear in the bag, I saw a massive scar on his chest, and a tiny hole below the other. I called 911. "There's a body. I'm on my garbage collection route and there's a body." I backed away from the bag as I spoke, not even waiting for her to ask what my emergency was. The smell was filling the driveway and I couldn't handle it. I coughed hoarsely into the phone, and for a moment, felt like I was going to throw up on it and the pavement. I had to cover my face with a rag, hold my breath and swallow as hard as I could to keep it in. "A body, okay," she replied. "Where are you on your route?" 128 Sundown Street," I told her. "Please get here fast." Seconds of silence, Long, horrible seconds passed as I clutched my phone and circled around the body back towards my truck. "All right, sir, and your name?" I paused. A tiny shiver ran down my spine. I knew that it wasn't just the cool night air. I knew that it was something else. "All right, just stay there, sir," she told me. "I'll send someone over right away." And before I could respond to that, she hung up, and I saw the bright white cast of a flashlight shine over the section of the driveway to my right. I bolted from the parking lot, leaving my truck behind. I ran beneath trees, dashed along a sidewalk between yards, leapt a fence and kept going. My steps hitched here and there as I wondered what I was doing, but my instinct screamed at me that trespassing was the least of my worries now, that I had to get the heck out. I ran for a mile and a half, until I made it back to my apartment. I didn't stick around. I got in my car and I drove onto the highway as fast as I could. So here I am, avoiding contact with my family and friends, hoping to keep them out of all of this. I'm doing this because I know that if I make them a target, they will be. I bought the Linux thumb drive that I'm typing this from at an independent tech shop a city back. This morning, its owner was on the news. He had been arrested for drug possession. And then there was the corner store clerk that I desperately told my story to. She was shot outside of her apartment 2 days ago. Getting the heck out like that might be the only reason that I'm alive now. Even then, I don't know if my luck will hold. Because as one man against some of the most powerful money in the world, that's all I have. I'll admit it, the odds are good I'm going to be just another body in one of those bags. Hopefully by warning everyone here, you'll all be individually a bit safer, and you won't be like me. If you work with unmarked waste, if you work in mail delivery, anything like that, listen when you're told not to snoop. You never know what's inside, and there's a good chance you really, really don't want to. The school day started off like any normal school day. Arrived at school late enough to miss the morning assembly, but early enough to get to my first class before the subject teacher arrived. Sit through class, recess, another class, lunch, and then 2 more classes. I had finished my penultimate class and was waiting for the last teacher to arrive at 2:15 p.m. To pass the time, I sat with my friends and we talked about the usual stuff that we normally do. Games, anime, and the occasional gossip. Well, 2:30 came and went, and then 2:45. And then a teacher came to the class to inform us that the subject teacher was ill and that there was no one to teach us. Naturally, we were excited to have some time off before going home. So some of these students stayed in class talking. Meanwhile, me and my friend went to get some fresh air. We walked along the school corridor on the 3rd floor, which our class was, down the stairs and then out into the compound and around the schoolyard. We eventually got tired and decided to go back to the stairs and have a seat. While we sat, we noticed the heavy wooden doors that, as far as I've been going to school, which was around 5 years, was always sealed, and the 2 bolt-on bars that always were bolted were lying on the ground as well, stopping the door from opening. So being curious teenagers, we decided to see what was behind them. As we opened the door, we saw a portion of the school that was sealed off from the rest of the school. Upon further inspection of this strange-looking room, we saw all the furniture and equipment one would normally find in a hospital's ER room. It looked like it was from the early 1900s, covered in dust and cobwebs. We walked around inside a bit and noticed a corner where any light didn't reach. Chills ran up my spine and I gazed into the blanket of darkness, trying to see what was beyond it. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight, and regret, followed by fear, washed over me as I did, and I saw what was on the other side of the room. In the corner of the room stood a white lady about 5'6" and torn in what looked like dried blood on her faded yellow, almost white dress, with what looked like bones lying on the floor. Instead of running, as my body screamed at me to do so, I stood there wondering how someone could have survived that. This can't be real. There's no way that she could be a real person, as this place had probably been sealed off since the last World War, when they used the school as a hospital. With that thought in mind, I decided to call out to her to see if she was actually real. She probably broke her neck turning it that fast around to stare at us as I heard a popping sound in her neck. It startled both of us as the rest of her body rocketed around and stared dead at me. Not at my friend, but me. "That's the power of WD-40 right there," said my friend, trying to lighten the whole ordeal by joking. If only it had worked. The feeling of dread shot into me as I stared into the soulless black pits that passed for her eyes. "This isn't real. It's a hallucination. I must be on drugs or something. No one can survive trapped in here for that long with no food, water, or fresh air." I remember thinking to myself then, as if she read my thoughts. She moved again, this time much quicker. So quick that my eyes could barely track her. She stopped about 12 feet in front of me, crushing my hopes into a million small pieces. And then, as if she read my mind again, she smiled a broad, toothy smile that stretched unnaturally from ear to ear. And this is when I noticed the long, sharp yellow and black teeth in her mouth. And then nothing. No movement or sound from the thing. For about a good 5 minutes or so, at least that's what it felt like, but in actuality it was probably 5 seconds. Is that all? I remember thinking because surely I must be hallucinating. With my gaze still fixed in her, I began to talk to my friend who was with me. "You're seeing this lady too. It's not just me," I asked. No reply. He left me here, I thought, not wanting to take my gaze off of the creature, be it hallucination or not. Slowly, I started walking backward towards the door, only to realize that she was smiling wider and wider as I neared the door. "You can smile all you want, but you're staying in here," I said to her, not really expecting a reply. About 5 feet from the door, she started walking towards me. The sounds of bones and cracking and joints popping bounced off the walls, as I watched in horror as her arms grew longer, her finger and fingernails getting longer and ending in claws, joints dislocating and legs growing to 2 times their length. "Really, you shouldn't have, sweetie. You don't have to change your appearance for me. I love you just the way you are," I said without really thinking as she was finished. I wanted to get the heck out of there. It was at this moment that I came to the realization that sealing the doors couldn't work, as she was too close for me to close them. So I began looking for ways to get away. I began looking to my left, where these stairs led to the outside field. "Wide open areas will do you no good," came a voice seemingly from in front of me. I snapped back to look at the lady. "You can't run from me, boy. But seeing that you're going to try anyway, I'll even give you a head start." Adrenaline and fear rushed through me like electricity through wire. Wasting no time, I took off up the stairs, and as I neared the top, I heard a scream that turned my blood to ice, followed by pounding coming up the stairs. I ran to the nearest turn, and as I looked over my shoulder, there it was, bumping into the walls, trying to catch me. I knew my best bet was to try to outrun this thing by using turns and narrow hallways. Fortunately, or unfortunately, my school had a lot of turns but hallways so big a truck could drive through them. I ran faster and faster after every turn. The crashing and screeching that was getting closer with each time the hallways got longer assured my increase in speed. I ran and ran until my body ached and my lungs burned. And then salvation. I saw the library doors half open. I ran in, I slammed the door closed and slammed the deadbolt that could keep the door shut even if she tried to barge through. The door shuddered as the creature slammed into it. Using the bookshelf next to the door, I slid it in front of it and toppled the one in front of the door to hold it in place. I finally had time to catch my breath. I looked around, windows open, and this being the school's only library, which was on the first floor, I knew I could survive the fall. So out and down I went, running to the gate as fast as I can. And then as soon as I was through the school gate, all the fear that I had was gone, just like that. I went home, told no one anything, and acted like it never happened. I woke up sweating around 2 the next day after suffering from a nightmare of being chased by the lady. I sighed in relief as I realized I was in my bed with my dog who was asleep next to me. I laid in bed for about 5 minutes when the same fear I had in school returned to me. A tapping came from the window, and then I heard the same voice that came from the lady.
I found you.